I didn't move out to the Arizona scrubland looking for a fight, believe me. I was done with fights, done with the noise, the deceit, and the endless politics of my old life. All I wanted was quiet, 6 acres of sun-baked earth outside a place called Canyon Ridge Estates, where the stars felt close enough to touch. But the minute I started breathing easy, the trouble showed up, dressed in a pastel polo shirt and carrying a clipboard like a weapon. My name is Ethan Bell, 40-something, retired, or maybe just exhausted from a decade and a half as a fraud investigator for the Federal Housing Authority, chasing down crooked developers and petty bureaucrats who thought the law was something they could simply edit. I cashed out early. Took my wife, Clara, a 4th-grade teacher who needed the calm as much as I did, and my teenage son, Leo, and we bought this place. 6 acres. No covenants. No restrictions. Paradise, right? The first week was perfect. Clara was unpacking her vintage garden tools. Leo was teaching the old ranch dog new tricks, and I was in my newly converted workshop, finally getting some real grease on my hands, restoring a beautiful 1970 Charger. I felt like I'd successfully outrun the nonsense, until day 8. I walked out to the mailbox, and there it was, wedged under the chain-link gate. A thick, official-looking envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just a cheap label screaming, mandatory integration notice. Canyon Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. I remember laughing. A loud, dry, hollow sound. A joke, I thought, a ridiculous prank. But I opened it anyway, right there under the scorching sun, and as I read that sickly sweet, legalese bullshit, the kind that says, "We're smiling while we stab you," my laughter died. The letter claimed our private parcel was now jurisdictionally relevant to Canyon Ridge's expansion and demanded a $4,000 joining fee, plus immediate monthly dues. If not, they threatened administrative and legal remedies. They had no clue who they were talking to. If there's one thing I know better than any 10 people inside that gated community, it's property law. I'd torn apart developers who used better scams than this to hide bodies. Jurisdictionally relevant isn't a legal term, it's a desperate lie. I spent the afternoon digging out my grant deed, title insurance, county maps, everything. I drafted a response so sharp it could slice glass, explaining exactly why they could take their notice, their expansion, and their absurd fees and file them under fantasy. I mailed certified copies everywhere, but I wanted to set the tone, so I drove into town that night, walked right up to their sacred community bulletin board, the Shrine of the Sacred Cork, as I called it, and thumbtacked my refusal right over their laminated, "Welcome New Members" sign. Let them read it. I figured that would be the end of it. A stupid letter from a desperate board, squashed by a mountain of evidence. I was wrong. That was just the prelude. That was before I met Veronica Slade. Veronica Slade, president of the Canyon Ridge HOA. She showed up 2 days later. Not at my gate, but 50 yards inside my property line, past the no trespassing signs, near the undeveloped rise on my western boundary. She was mid-50s, sharp-shouldered, with sunglasses big enough to hide behind, clutching a clipboard like it was the 10 Commandments. I caught her staring out past my workshop, scribbling notes, coordinates, sightlines, something that looked like a rough survey sketch. Not looking at me, looking at the land. "You're a long way past my no trespassing sign, ma'am," I said, voice calm, not shouting, just letting the heat drain out of my words. "Care to explain why you're scouting my private property?" She didn't flinch. She just turned, gave me that smug, proprietary smile, the kind only a true petty tyrant can master. "I'm Veronica Slade, president of the HOA. I just wanted to make sure you received our welcome packet." "Oh, I got your packet," I replied, staring directly at the corner of her clipboard. "And I posted my response on your community bulletin board last night. You should read it." Her jaw tightened. Just a millimeter, but I saw it. "The loss of control. We expect cooperation from all adjacent properties," she hissed. "This," I waved my hand over the desert behind me, "isn't adjacent. It's private land. And you are trespassing." She dropped the line she clearly thought would silence me. "The previous owners resisted, too. They left within a month." "Well," I said, leaning in just a fraction, "I'm not them." And with that, she spun on her heel and walked back across my land like she owned the very air I was breathing. I knew then, she wasn't scouting me. She was scoping out something that ran right through me. And the war had officially begun. The next stage was relentless. The police call started. Not one or two. They became routine. Veronica weaponized the 911 line like it was her private office extension. First, it was a claim of possible squatting and unauthorized entry. Two cruisers showed up. I showed Officer Javier Rios, a smart, tired young man, my grant deed and title insurance. He apologized, filed the report, and left, shooting a look of pure annoyance back toward Veronica, who was standing across the street with two pastel-clad disciples, watching the show. Good. They were already tired of her. Then came the parade. Illegal construction. I showed permits. Noise violation. At 2 p.m., with nothing louder than a quail tapping on the gravel. Possible weapon threat. I held up my big impact wrench. Its kill count is 0, officer. They laughed. She watched, arms crossed, teeth clenched. But she kept escalating. She wasn't just probing. She was trying to build that narrative Officer Rios had warned me about, trying to paint me as erratic, dangerous, noncompliant. A nuisance the county would eventually be forced to remove. The line incinerated when she called in a report of child endangerment. Claimed my son, Leo, was unsupervised and near dangerous chemicals. My heart went cold. Clara came running out, eyes blazing. Chemicals, officer? Show me the chemicals. My son is playing with a tennis ball. Rios was furious. Mr. Bell, he whispered, this wasn't just false. It was malicious. People don't weaponize child protective services unless they're preparing something much bigger. He looked at Veronica, who was observing from her usual perch, cold and clinical. You need to document everything, he urged me. She just dragged your kid into this. That night, standing by Leo's door, watching him breathe, I knew I was done playing defense. She crossed the line, burned the bridge, and I was going to take the pen out of her hand and use it to write her final chapter. The question was, why the desperation? Why the reckless escalation? I pulled out the HOA welcome packet, that glossy book of bureaucratic garbage, and forced myself to read it. Most of it was useless noise, but then I saw it. A tiny map buried in the back, showing future community upgrades. A dotted line, a proposed new maintenance access path, ran straight to the ridge line, the very spot Veronica was scouting on day one. A coincidence? My gut screamed no. I scanned the tiny QR code and dug into the website's metadata. My federal training kicked in. Someone had uploaded a file and then tried to hide it by removing the link, but they forgot to scrub the file name from the source code. I guessed the URL, and it loaded instantly. It was a real, signed Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between Canyon Ridge HOA and a company called Crimson Peak Development. They built upscale retirement complexes and golf courses. The MOU was clear. Canyon Ridge would provide utility access and a secured, uninterrupted easement across my land by July 15th. Today was June 20th. That explained the fire under Veronica's clipboard. But there was more. I kept digging and found another file, named Simply Transfer. It was a grainy photo of a bank deposit slip. Recipient, Veronica Slade. Not the HOA. Not the board. Veronica Slade. Amount, $55,000. Memo, easement guarantee. I leaned back from my monitor. My breathing hitched. She already took the money, Clara whispered, who had walked in behind me, reading over my shoulder. That's just the deposit, I said, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. The rest is $500,000 tied to the final access approval. She's not fighting for the community, Clara. She's fighting for her own bank account. The conflict wasn't over a fence line or a pool rule. It was pure, simple fraud. She needed me gone, or forced into the HOA, before the deadline, or she'd lose the deposit and face a massive civil suit. She had run out of time, and desperate people always make stupid mistakes. She wasn't done with the escalation, of course. She went scorched earth. After I shut down 7 inspections in a single day, she moved to outright crime. My external cameras went static. She'd bought a cheap signal jammer. But I had a secret weapon, a hidden, battery-powered trail cam deep in the brush. It recorded 2 of her cronies, one named Gary, a nervous, sweaty guy who drove the HOA golf cart, dumping 4 rusted chemical barrels on my property at 2 a.m. I waited until they were gone, disposed of the barrels myself, and let the environmental quality inspector find nothing the next morning. Veronica watched from her car as the inspector apologized and left with empty hands. Her expression cracked. She was losing. Then came the fire. 2:15 a.m. My workshop heat sensor shrieked. Someone, her nephew, Trevor, a hot-headed kid, had tossed a lit road flare near my storage shed, which housed paint thinner and fuel cans. If that had caught, half my property would have been cremated. I put it out, sweating through my shirt, and found a half-melted, cheap work glove fused into the char. And my thermal camera, mounted behind a vent pipe, had captured Trevor limping away, jumping onto his dirt bike with no headlights. Arson. Attempted murder, if the DA wanted to push it. The very next day, the low blow, the email sent to Clara's school principal, complete with forged charts and faked signatures, accusing her of financial misconduct and embezzlement. The metadata on the PDF showed it was created by CR, admin, 2, G. Peterson, Gary, her little lapdog. My wife, who bakes banana bread for the neighborhood, was crying into her hands because a power-hungry idiot had decided to ruin her life. That's when the ice truly formed in my veins. Veronica needed leverage. She needed something to control the story. She needed evidence, or the illusion of it, that I was corrupt, too, and she was going to send someone gullible to find it. Someone like Gary. I looked around my workshop, then smiled. A slow, cold smile. I turned off the main lights, left the door cracked just an inch, and set the final stage. I fanned out a stack of decoy folders on my workbench, organized enough to look important, messy enough to tempt a thief. The top folder had a thick, black label. Evidence. V. Slade Corruption Originals. Do not disturb. Inside, a few meaningless maintenance logs on top. And at the bottom, one single piece of paper with a bold message. I didn't have to wait long. A faint, nervous click at the door. Gary squeezed inside. Clumsy. Sweating. His flashlight jittering across the walls. A pawn. He spotted the folder immediately, snatched it, flipped through the decoy docs, and then reached the bottom sheet. The instant he read the message, he froze. Every muscle locked. His eyes went wide with pure panic, and he did exactly what I wanted. His gaze jerked upward, searching the rafters. Click. Perfect thermal capture. Full facial profile. Undeniable. I stepped out of the deep shadow behind the drill press. My boots crunched the gravel. Evening, Gary. He nearly swallowed his tongue. Ethan. I wasn't. You broke into my workshop, I said, voice steady, calm, the way a prosecutor presents evidence. On camera, with intent to steal felony evidence. He stumbled back against the workbench, sending wrenches rolling. Veronica said I had to. She said she needed the documents back. She said she'd blame everything on me. There it is, I said softly. She told you were expendable. I walked closer, stopping just in front of him. That folder you're holding? The top papers are decoys. The bottom sheet, the one that made your heart stop? That one is just for you. He looked down. The incriminating note was crumpled in his fist. Proof he'd panicked. Proof he'd hide it. You're going to pocket that note? I continued, leaning in. You're going to hide it. And when you bring that folder back to Veronica, she'll only see those dull, useless documents on top. She'll think you saved her. His voice cracked. Why? Because tomorrow morning, I said, cold as the desert night, the sheriff's intelligence group is paying a visit to Canyon Ridge HOA. And Veronica needs to be completely unaware. I turned toward the door. Behind me, he whispered, voice small and breaking. What do I do? I didn't look back. You do what Veronica never learned to do, Gary. Tell the truth. I woke before the sun, walked into my office, and locked the door. The screen glowed, illuminating the wall of evidence. Trail cam footage of the dumping. Thermal footage of the arson. Two-angle video of Gary's break-in and confession. The MOU, the $55,000 check, the forgery against Clara. 6 exhibits. 6 nails for her coffin. I compressed the package, encrypted it, and drafted the email. Subject, urgent. Multiple felony violations by Canyon Ridge HOA. RICO pattern identified. I hit send. 37 seconds later, my phone buzzed. A reply from the DA's office. Asset received. Units mobilizing at first light. Do not engage further. I walked out onto my porch with my coffee. The HOA office across the street was silent, dark. Veronica was probably asleep, dreaming Gary had saved her. She had no idea that sunrise would bring warrants, detectives, and a charge of racketeering. At 7:02 a.m., they arrived. Not one cruiser. Black SUVs. Investigations Division. Officer Rios was leading the charge, hat on, jaw set. The man Veronica had treated like an errand boy was now here on my behalf. Rios knocked. Firm. Official. Final. The door cracked open and Veronica appeared. Hair in curlers, robe half-tied, sunglasses still on. Officers? Is there a problem? Did someone report vandalism? She forced a brittle smile. Rios didn't flinch. Mrs. Slade, this is a search and seizure warrant. Step outside now. Her face drained of color as she read the charges. Forgery. Environmental dumping. Arson. Conspiracy. RICO. There must be some misunderstanding, she whispered, reaching for her phone. Rios gently, but firmly, caught her wrist. No calls. That device is now evidence. The cuffs went on. The metallic click echoed across the morning like a period at the end of a long, vicious sentence. Then she saw me, standing on my porch. She expected me to smile, to gloat, to shout. I didn't. I simply lifted my coffee mug in a slight, polite tilt, a morning greeting. Indifference. It was the most violent insult I could have delivered. She screamed my name, trying to lunge toward me, but Rios held her steady. By 7:38 a.m., she was in the back of a cruiser, her sunglasses dangling from one ear. The street grew quiet again. I didn't join their interim HOA board. Not my job, not my fight anymore. Clara's job was reinstated with a formal apology. And Karen Slade? She pled out. 14 years in a federal facility. No more HOA meetings for her. But the silence bothered me. I kept thinking about all the people out there who get crushed by petty tyranny simply because they don't have federal training and a thermal camera. So, I built one last thing. A steel post, 12 feet high, bolted into concrete by my gate. On it, a giant, weatherproof placard with a massive black and white QR code. Above it, a simple metal plate. HOATCH.US Public Record Archive. Below it, scan for truth. No faces. No accusations. Just a link to a site containing every video, every document, every timestamp, all posted as public record. Totally legal. Totally devastating. The best way to fight a bully isn't always with noise. Sometimes, it's just by showing people the playbook. The kind of peace we found isn't the kind you get from running away. It's the kind you earn. The kind you defend. I'd love to know what you think. Is posting everything online like that going too far? Or is total transparency the only way to hold these little tyrants accountable? Have you ever dealt with an HOA that used the police or the law against you? Drop a comment below. Let's talk about where the line is between community rule and outright corruption. And if you've got a story, share it. Because sometimes, just knowing you're not alone is the strongest weapon we have.